For a couple of years after I studied architecture and been involved in mainstream architecture, I did overland trips through Africa. And I saw communities that could not afford me as a mainstream architect. And the question that bugged me the most was, what are we doing for such communities through our training, through our practice, through what we do as architects? And I'm talking about rural communities, communities in the peri-urban spaces. We call them townships, informal settlements, etc. And I think that's where my awakening and realization of what we as architects could do started, this journey of exploring possibilities. And I guess a lot of the through this trip, I realized that there was already ingenuity in Africa. People were doing things, and I guess one of the questions I asked myself was, why are we not, as African architects, following suit with that? So I guess I'm going to give you a presentation that kind of hints on certain possibilities when you do that, when you ask questions, and when you really start listening, I guess with beyond your mind, with your heart. And what I mean by that is the architect's ear and eye has been trained through academia to listen to communities in a certain way. And yet when we get to the ground, you almost have to unlearn that. And for me, I learned it through that Damascus moment, through traveling through Africa and going back through a second master's to understand how to work with communities. This is an example of a waste picker. We were told about him. His waste cut had been hit by a vehicle. And obviously, when we're called in to intervene, first the architecture mind kicks in, we started asking very relevant questions. Where does he stay? What's the distance? What's the issue? Why was he hit? Is there visibility, et cetera, et cetera. And this is, the other part about this is when you start listening with your mind, you kind of remove the time constraint because time is one of our enemies in terms of really being able to listen with the heart and not with the ear. And what I mean by that is by following him home, by being with him for about 9 months, and actually more than 9 months, we started really understanding him as a person, him as an asset, because he collects stuff, he travels through the township, he goes into the main roads, he has built his own home, and we started understanding the method of his working. And because of that unlimited time constraint, we were able to really work with, I think, assets that were him. So I think we were able to harness him as a social asset much better. And for example, we found out that he's a cobbler. Once he does the trade-off with the waste, which is twice or thrice a week, he sews, he fixes shoes, he fixes bikes, etc., etc. And for that reason, we were able to, I'm going to fast track this into the result because I'll show you other precedents. We were able to design this waste bike with him. This entire bicycle, so the front of the bicycle is a bike that he chose from a secondhand shop, and the back of it, we worked with him to design it. It's all made out of recycled material, in this case from the motor car industry. The issue of visibility was tackled in terms of putting lights. We even put plates in this bicycle so that people could see him. But what it does, it starts giving dignity, visibility, etc., to this person, and it's a design that he can interact with, he can maintain, he can work with. In fact, this was one of two. I will not show you the other. So this is the one that is on the main road. There was a smaller one that he works with within the township. This is him testing the bicycle. But this was really engineered, and it came from the understanding of who Kusta, who is the waste picker, is, we worked in a community in the peri-urban space in South Africa in the township. And in this case, we built this building from recycled material. And the story of this recycled material, or the bottles and the pallets here, is because we realized every shack had one common theme. They were made up of pallets, and there was a lot of bottles lying around. And by asking them the questions, where were you finding this waste material, we were able to track. By the way, this project took about 2 years. So we spent the first year mapping the community and really going past the question. We ask communities, what do you need? And the community can throw you off by giving you all dreams. They want a stadium, they want a shopping mall and things like that. So by being there for about a year and a half, we were really able to track things like, in this case, the material. We realized that this community had access to material pallets and from Coca-Cola, which is in the boundary of the township, and from the former General Motors, where they could get all this material and build from. And what we did there, fast tracking now with architecture and engineering and all that, was we decided to use the very same material, look at the technology they had, and advance it through R&D, research and development, into a building that they would understand, that they would see, that they could maintain, and just use the replica material in a new way. And I guess this, so this image here, this wall here, was actually nominated for Design Endeavor Most Beautiful Object in South Africa. But the facility is able to tackle a lot of the social issues that we found by asking these questions to the community. And we realized the low-lying fruit here was the children. Between the age of about 6 months to about 3 years, they were totally vulnerable. They were the most vulnerable in the community and the very elderly. And through understanding the challenge of bringing water in this very informal settlement, we were able to design a toilet system where the water was brought in and the teachers could focus on teaching because they would bring the water in the morning and the kids would be able to flush the toilet with it and deal with sanitation. So this is that image I was talking about that was selected for 2017 as one of finalists for Most Beautiful Object in South Africa. I think for me, the idea of really embracing the material and asking the questions of what can we do with this material? How do we extend the possibility of that material? And this image kind of summarizes design, architecture, technology, material, culture, everything kind of put together in a nice way. For the Alliance Francaise, this is a street Fête de la Musique. It's a street festival like any other. And I think the question I was asking here was how can you engage the citizen who's coming just for pure pleasure and fun and a social event in a festival, beyond the very obvious of blasting them with information, So right from the design, from the poster design, which is what you can see on the left, the poster design is actually a palette, and we kind of put the Fête de la Musique and kind of introduce the festival. But throughout the festival, there were very small gestures of, for example, the furniture in the festival was all recycled. This structure that you're seeing here actually made the backdrop of the stage, and this is made up of paper tubes. We collected these paper tubes for about 6 months. And they were in a garage and we kind of cut them and to create this backdrop. And many in that community would not believe that those were paper tubes, because of how the thing had come together. But the realization that this can be done with an alternative material, with a recycled material. But below here, what we've done there is we've brought stories from different parts of the community, and we've tried to engage the community in terms of a broader audience. As you know, in South Africa, there was apartheid South Africa, so the apartheid history rather. So it's almost trying to bring different stories from different parts of the city into this space, which is the festival, in a very soft way and kind of introducing, well, I guess the whole society to it. With Gogo Selena, this lady had lived in this structure for about this structure was built in 1954. She's about 78 years old. She's lived here her entire life. We were called in simply because the roof was simply to fix the ceiling, because it seemed like the ceiling was collapsing. And on further investigation, we realized actually the entire roof was collapsing. And the question there was, should we fix the ceiling and the roof and that's it? Or should we do more? And the more here was because we realized that she had a granddaughter who was then about 16 years old. living in one room, cooking in the same space. It was not a space that a child who's almost matriculating is your final year of secondary school. How do we improve their lives, and how do we convince everybody else to come on board this? Anyway, long story short, here's the building. We decided to build this building out of in this case, because the founder was Isuzu Motors. We went into their yard, we looked at what they had, we pulled out all the material, and in this case, you're looking at about 90% recycled material. All the wood, collapsible shipping containers, and we built this in the height of COVID. So this is 2021. Gogo is over there, and we're restricted in terms of the people who can go in. And in fact, here she's just inspecting us, and we can only be 4 to 5 people maximum on site. So we had to rethink our building method, be it prefab or whichever way we went. And that's us working late hours. And this is the final design. You can see the lady, Gogo, having a visitor. We restored the old building. And believe it or not, this entire building is actually 90% recycled. And I think this is one of the real pleasures of having listened with the heart and not just with the ear. This child, the granddaughter now is in university, second year. She did well for exams. She has a bright future. She has a space that she can call her own, where she studies. She can take care of her grandmother, and just the brightness that this project or this building brings to this family. She will never receive the RDP house. The RDP house is the Mandela house, which is for a lot of communities. They receive that for free from the government, and they have this home. This is a bit of an anatomy of the building. I will not get into it, but it's recycled. We've done mainstream buildings, which were much more difficult, in engaging, but the same thing keeps coming about, which is really looking at resources that are within the space that that we architects, contractors, the community don't necessarily value. I will end my presentation with this project, which is the latest in Cape Town. In this case, through a precinct, we worked within a very tight precinct. And the mission here was to rethink the value of waste material and put that into a building. And it needs a different kind of thinking. This project took about 2 years in the making. And within those 3 years, you can imagine how many questions we were asking ourselves, re-strategizing, rethinking. And the target here is 98% recycled. And you can imagine what that means in terms of impacting circularity, impacting the environment, impacting practice. And you've seen from the previous projects, there is a subconscious question on how do we involve larger communities. And in this case, after an inventory and really understanding the challenge of the design, which is actually it's a cafeteria, basically. I started mapping the area, looking at where we could use that material. And this is the renders of it. And the circularity here is looking at food production, introducing that food production into the design. So this is a roof layout. These are some of the renders of it. So you can see the entrance. And I'm skipping a big component of it, which is really rethinking how to use materials, recycled materials, alternative materials in a building, and being able to meet the requirements of mainstream architecture using this kind of thinking. And here you're looking at all the lessons we've learned kind of brought together into this building. You can obviously see the paper tubes we've used, all these lights, all these fittings, everything here you're seeing is 98% recycled. And I think the idea was kind of trying to look at what already exists, what people don't see and value, and reintroduce it with a new thinking into buildings. A bit of just on how we did it. You can see crushed concrete ends up being recycled. Here you're looking at possible prototypes. And again, remember, this is 3 years of really going in and re-looking at these materials and being able to make these materials come to life in a new way, thinking about the energy footprint, the water footprint, the carbon footprint, etc., etc. In this case, we realized gypsum boards are totally disastrous. Remember that the 40% in South Africa, 40%, actually, I think it's even more like 50% of the waste that goes into landfill is actually from the construction industry. And cement is one very big problem. Anyway, so we specifically targeted gypsum and concrete and to see how we could reuse that in the building. And here you can see various samples. I'm going to skip that into the next slide. And obviously, this means then we start talking to mainstream architects and kind of presenting these possibilities. In this case, it was in the Green Building Council. I was one of the speakers for the 2022 conference. And obviously, I mean, we presented, I was one of the activist architects who represented Africa, I guess, for the COP27. So it's not just work that is happening in a corner. Well, it is because of the R&D and everything, but we pull it out and we try to bring it into the mainstream space. I'm going to stop sharing because I think I've covered my time. But the idea here, or the question here that I've been asking is, what are we not seeing? What are we not hearing? And part of that is really rethinking, listening to communities differently, and using the skill set of an architect. I mean, architects are trained minimum 7 years, right? So we have an asset, which is being able to understand the built environment. But adding on to that, hearing with your heart and being able to value materials differently is able to produce an architecture that starts being very inclusive in terms of engaging communities. But the critique there was, this is architecture for poor communities. And I think that last project you've seen is the idea of pushing it into mainstream architecture, because if this, we're currently auditing this building, and if it meets its target, which is it being one of the first net zero buildings, zero material into landfill, and having such a high, it's level 3 energy audit, it brings this question into the mainstream space. So, and being very intentional, being conscious and very intentional in being able to use the skill set that I have, that we have, in engaging in a different kind of societal issue, and making that issue, bringing that issue into the mainstream. So that's my presentation. That's what I do, and I hope that it inspires a new generation of architects who start thinking in this way and being able to impact society.